Hey there, loves. This week we're going to be learning about Agni and Ama, the digestive fire and metabolic toxins. This first video is going to start with the topic of Agni. Then tomorrow's video will be the subject of Ama. Let's dive into this week's learning objectives. We're going to be learning the functions of Agni, the importance of Agni, the types of Agni, proper meal size, learning the different states of Agni. Then we're going to be covering Ama and the formation process. We're going to be learning the qualities and causes of Ama. We're going to be learning the signs and symptoms and some tips to treat Ama at home. Agni is known as the digestive fire. It is the transformational force that is responsible for our metabolism. It helps us to convert our food into the tissue of the body. Agni is our main connection to nature. Someone who has a strong Agni is less likely to suffer from ailments and diseases. Both body and mind are directly affected by our digestive fire. Agni is responsible for helping us to digest our food, to convert it into the usable energy and balancing the doshas. Since Agni governs our immune system, it's no surprise to learn that when Agni is out of balance, so are our doshas, which means disease and ailments. Agni is our main connection to nature, and according to many Ayurvedic scholars, it is the very essence of good health. Agni is considered the cause of life. Notice in one of the older slides, there was a baby in the womb. Where is the umbilical cord located? Right in the stomach. The functions of Agni are meant to digest food, nourish tissues, nourish the doshas, create immunity, maintain our life force, and helps us with our mind-body balance. There are 13 types of Agni. We're not going to go too in-depth here. We're just going to go over some basic concepts. When we eat and drink, the particles are moved down our GI tract into our stomach and intestines, where the first fire lives. This is known as the abdominal fire. This is where food is broken down into smaller chunks, where nutrients are produced and absorbed, and where our waste is formed and forwarded to excretion. Next, once the food and drink is absorbed by the abdominal fire, it moves on towards the elemental fire. This is considered the 5 fires and is primarily the function of the liver. This is where nutrients are broken down further into the 5 great elements, space, air, fire, water, earth, and then transformed into the 7 tissues to be transported through the bloodstream to the various body parts. Finally, we have the tissue fire, also known as the 7 tissues, cells, or fires. In Ayurveda, cells were known as fires. These fires are tissue-specific for nutrient absorption. This is where our nutrients are transformed into material and energy. According to Ayurveda, we are only supposed to eat till half fullness, which flies completely in the face of standard American diets and most family dynamics. Many of us in the US are used to having huge portion sizes, especially at restaurants. Even the cups are huge here in the US. Ultimately, eating to half fullness and liquids, ideally water, about 1/4. The rest we leave empty. Why? Expansion. This extra room will leave space for the stomach to properly digest and break down our food. Without having extra room, we're going to have issues with heartburn, indigestion, post-meal lethargy, and or excessive gas. So imagine if you had a fire going and you dumped a bunch of wet, soggy wood onto that fire. Would it smother the fire completely? Probably not, but it definitely would slow things down quite a bit. So we don't want to overdo or overburden Agni when we're eating. So the rule of thumb is eating to half fullness to give our digestive fire a chance to burn through that food. I don't know about you, but I was always taught not to waste food. Obviously, however, instead of guilt and shaming ourselves and our children into finishing what's on the plate, instead, we need to work on making our portion sizes a whole lot smaller. Heck, make the plate smaller. Make the cup smaller. Don't allow old and unhealthy mental conditioning take over logic and reasoning. We need to use our hands as our portion size guides. This rule of thumb goes for kids as well. Use the size of their hands to determine their portion sizes. Obviously, the bigger your hand, the bigger your body, the bigger your stomach. This excludes people who have had gastric bypass or lap band surgery. If this is you, please follow the fullness guide, but your fist determines your size of vegetables. Your cupped hand determines your size of carb portion, or as I like to call it, the amount of whole grains. And using your thumb to size the amount of healthy fats. For people who are trying to decrease vata, I would say increase or double the amount of fat that you would use and decrease the amount of vegetable portion just slightly. For people who are trying to reduce kapha dosha, maybe reduce the amount of portion size for the carbohydrates or the whole grains and increase the size of the vegetable portion, and also slightly decrease the amount of fat. For people who are trying to decrease pitta dosha, I would say to slightly decrease the amount of fats and increase the whole grains and vegetable portion sizes. Many people don't realize that the human body has a really hard time telling the difference between hunger cues and thirst cues. They are basically the same signal. Many times we think we might be hungry, but we're not quite sure. Before grabbing a snack, try drinking 8 to 16 ounces of room temperature or warm water and wait 15 minutes. If hunger is there after then, it is possible this is true hunger. Listening to our body is more important than listening to our old thought patterns when it comes to intuitive eating. Also, according to Ayurveda, a full-grown healthy adult does not require 3 meals a day. This does not apply to anyone who's pregnant, nursing, malnourished, anorexia or bulimia, or is recovering from surgery. Please consult your physician for any medical advice in this regard. This myth that we need a minimum of 3 meals a day has very little long-term scientific evidence to prove this to be true. Children, yes, since they are growing. Pregnancy, yes, since they are growing a child. A professional athlete, of course, because they're using their body as a high-performance machine. But for the average, everyday adult human, 3 meals a day is not recommended. In fact, it's too much for some body types. Our bodies were designed by nature to go without food for short periods or even long periods of time. This is why our bodies convert food to fat cells. Fat is our body's way of storing energy for later when we don't have access to food. Quick tip, instead of practicing a keto diet, just fast instead. It does the exact same thing without the huge risk to the cardiovascular health. Now let's circle back to Agni for a second. Let's start to talk about the 4 states of Agni. We are able to categorize 4 main types based off of dosha imbalance. Agni can be in any one of these 4 states at any given time. Our age and time of day can affect Agni as well. So keep in mind that we also go through these states throughout our life and throughout the day. What we eat, how we eat, and when we eat, all are factors that help keep Agni happy. First in our lineup is erratic Agni. This is when our Agni is irregular due to high vata. Erratic Agni occurs when our eating schedule is unstable or there is too much bitter, pungent, or astringent tastes in the diet. Our digestive system is directly linked to our internal clock, also known as circadian rhythms. When we eat meals on a regular basis, our body literally knows when to start producing the digestive enzymes to assist in breaking down our food. When we eat an irregular schedule, our bodies have no sense of balance or ritual. Our bodies thrive off of routine. When we eat sporadically throughout the day or week, our bowel movements become very irregular. Erratic Agni can manifest as IBS, constipation, diarrhea, stomach spasms. This is why meal timing is so essential to our health. We can gauge this off our bowel movements. If we aren't having a bowel movement first thing every morning consistently, then chances are our digestion is dealing with erratic Agni. If this is you, then we need to focus on eating around the same time every day. Eat more sweet, sour, and salty tasting foods and decrease bitter, pungent, and astringent tastes until Agni feels more balanced. And increase water intake to half your body weight in ounces, ideally hot or warm water. Next in our lineup is hypofunctioning Agni, aka Mand Agni. It means our digestive fire is too low due to excessive kapha. We will suffer from low appetite, food intolerances, indigestion, weight gain, and lethargy. If If kapha is too high, increase bitter, pungent, and astringent tasting foods, and significantly decrease sweet, sour, and salty tasting foods and drinks until balance is achieved. Also, make sure you're eating foods for the gunas as well. For kapha, we want to eat light, dry, and heating foods. We want to drink hot or warm water. Kapha imbalance is one of the few types of imbalances where coffee or caffeinated beverages is acceptable in moderation. Coffee itself is considered bitter, and the acidity will help to increase the digestive fire. Now notice I said coffee by itself. I didn't say go to your local Starbucks and buy a venti caramel frappuccino. That has a ton of sugar and milk, and it's also cold, which increases kapha. When I say coffee, I mean old-fashioned black coffee. If you cannot stand black coffee, some artificial sweeteners are a decent replacement, but that needs to be determined based on personal preference. Some artificial sweeteners can cause digestive upset in some people and not in others, so that's where trial and error will come in. Plus, some artificial sweeteners can cause an insulin response in the body, which could be considered breaking your fast. There is also the choice of switching to an alternative such as black tea, chai, or green tea. Plain, ideally, these have much lower acidity and taste pretty good without sweeteners. And they can all help hypo-functioning Agni. Then we have hyper-functioning digestion, aka Tikshnagni. This is when the digestive system is too high due to excessive pitta dosha. Some symptoms include heartburn, GERD, ulcers, and inflammation of the GI tract. This is when we need to focus on sweet, bitter, and astringent tasting foods and significantly reducing sour, salty, and pungent foods and beverages. Coffee is highly acidic despite its bitter taste and is absolutely not recommended for hyperfunctioning Agni. And the same goes for meat. Meat and coffee, despite the sweet and bitter taste, are considered highly acidic and will only increase digestive disorders such as heartburn and ulcers. Food should be focused on light, sweet tastes, whole grains such as rolled oats, and sweet fruits such as melons or much lighter form of the sweet taste. And alkaline bitter tastes such as green leafy vegetables or cucumbers will help to slow down the hyperfunctioning Tiksha Agni. Lastly, we have our ultimate goal, which is balanced Agni, aka Sama Agni. We will be able to feel when our Agni is balanced because we'll have so much energy, strength, stamina, and enthusiasm. A great indication of balanced Agni is timely evacuation of bowels and bladder. If we are waking up in the morning and having one good semi-solid bowel movement, ideally no odor, light brown, banana shaped, then we're good to go. We are balanced. The bowel movement will feel amazing. If we are having any bowel movement problems, this is a big indication that the meals we ate or drank yesterday were not conducive to our digestive system. Use your bowel movements as a guide to your health. Constipation, diarrhea, foul smelling, deer droppings, dark green, etc. Something is up. Pay attention and adjust your diet accordingly. And if you still aren't feeling balanced, then consult an Ayurvedic doctor about what needs to be done to obtain some Agni. Ginger tea is highly recommended for all doshic types, and fresh is best. Ginger is actually considered tridoshic and helps to balance Agni. It's super cheap and easy to make fresh. You can leave the skin on, roughly chop, and throw on the stove to boil with water. Or you can infuse the ginger by throwing it in your fresh water bottle. Throw some lemon in it if you're feeling vata, or throw cinnamon in if you're feeling kapha, or honey if you're feeling pitta. Did your mom ever give you ginger ale when your stomach hurt? That's because ginger is really great for nausea, indigestion, stomach cramps, etc. Don't bother with the ginger ale though, because it has an obscene amount of sugar. Just make your own version. It's super easy. When erratic, hypo, or hyper-functioning Agni is present, this will lead to the production of toxic waste known as ama, which we will get into tomorrow. Stay tuned for your knowledge check.